Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 413 of CryptoBiography, and it's a one-episode story called Last Will. And here we go. He woke up in a cell. Not what he thought of as a prison cell, which in his mind was more like a dungeon with cold rock and a dampness and rusting iron bars and a heavy wooden door, but a clean room, bright, absolutely empty except for a cot. Not even a toilet, he thought. So I won't be here long. One wall was glass or plastic, which he knew he would not be able to break. Set in it was a door, also clear. He felt as though he was being watched, though no one was on the other side of the glass. In fact, it was mostly just a hallway, with the only thing of interest being an intersection he could make out off to the left. Not even other cells or doors were visible. He sat on the cot and waited. He looked down. He was dressed in the same clothing he was wearing last night. It was a bit dirty and torn in at least two places. When the raid had happened, people had panicked. He didn't know what to do, so he waited. After some amount of time, the exact amount he couldn't tell, but it was certainly over an hour, two men came to the door. They unlocked it and entered. The first one was about his height, which was quite average. The other was taller and thin in the face and neck. They both wore well-fitting governmental uniforms. The first one said with a bit of a sneer, "Get up." He'd always been personable. "Where are we going?" he asked, standing. "Time for you to die." The tall one grabbed him by the shoulder and moved him towards the door. He could feel his knees buckling, and he actually stumbled a little. The tall man tightened his grip on his shoulder and said, "Easy." They walked down some corridors he had never seen before. He wasn't even sure what building this was. Presumably it was the Hall of Justice. "Why?" the first one replied. "It's been ordered." "But I haven't done anything." "You were at the meeting. That was enough." "I was going to see what it was about. I hadn't even joined up, hadn't even heard anything from them about their plans." "Doesn't matter. Keep moving." He did, though his legs were still wobbly and his stomach felt awful, like it had a stone in it. They went outside and through a square, which towered up on all sides. It was generic, sterile architecture, and he still wasn't sure if this was the Justice Building or not. They marched into a door on the side opposite where they had entered the square. It was still more generic halls. He imagined he could be lost if he had been given a week to memorize the layout of this place. But the two government agents clearly knew exactly where they were going. He was directed into a small room. In some ways, it was exactly like the cell he had woken in, with its sterile white colors and its confined dimensions. Instead of a cot, this one had a chair and a series of drawers built into the wall. "So the meeting was a sham?" "It was," the first agent said, pleasure in his voice. "And I'm to be killed over it? Is that normal for people who haven't even done a single thing against the government before?" "The director said everyone from this meeting is liquidated," the first agent said, almost purring out the words. "Will I be anesthetized before being killed?" "Sure," the first agent said, but it sounded like a lie. "So you'll still be killed outright with no succor." "May I use the toilet? I need it." "No," the second taller agent said. "Don't worry about it. We are the prior team. The post team will deal with that, as needed." "Are you sure I can't have anesthesia or some sort of calming agent?" The first agent had opened a drawer. He took out a metal implement. It was shaped to fit his hand, and at the end was a tiny needle. He held up with his other hand a glass ampule, but one so small he could hardly believe the yellow liquid inside was enough to kill him. It was the size of a single kernel of corn. He inserted the tiny ampule into the metal device, and it locked into place. "Are you sure?" he said, but the second agent grabbed his arm. The The first agent stabbed into his forearm with the needle, and as quickly as he had jabbed, he had withdrawn it. "And we're done," he said. He looked down at his arm. There was a slight sting where the needle had punctured, but the hole was so small it hadn't even bled. "That's it?" "Yes, you're dead." "Like in a minute? An hour?" "You are a chatty one. Don't worry about it." His head was spinning. He didn't know if it was the injection working or just adrenaline. He thought of something. "Hey, there's one thing you forgot," he said, and pointed with his free arm at the puncture site. The second agent, still holding his arm, craned his head to look. "You forgot to swab the area," he said. "That's," the second one started, but he had already taken his free hand and done a back punch to his temple. He grunted and stumbled back. He fell back, and his head also hit the top of the chair, and he went to the ground hard. The other agent gave a cry and went for his pistol. He had taken some self-defense courses some years back. The back punch had worked, but he'd done it slightly wrong, and the back of his hand hurt. He had not hit only with the knuckle, as he should have. Now he gave a heavy front kick, and the first agent took it in the stomach. He fell again against the drawer, and ampules spilled everywhere on the ground. He went at the agent, not wanting him to get his pistol. He stomped him hard on the face, and the man went instantly still. He knew he had gotten very lucky. 2 blows, 2 unconscious agents. His mind was racing. How many had they killed that they hadn't even bothered to tie him down? And if they weren't bothering to tying people down, how quickly did this poison act? His heart was racing even harder, and he tried to calm himself. It could work in a dozen different ways, but one might be by causing a heart attack, and he didn't want to die any sooner than he had to. He knew that it couldn't be long. He looked around the room thinking, but there were no obvious places to go in this labyrinth, and surely guards would be coming any moment. He looked at the ampules on the floor. None of them were broken. They were too small to break from a short fall, and especially onto the rubberized flooring. He grabbed the needle and quickly figured out how to release the old ampule. He put a new one in and tightened it down. Should he kill them? He'd gone to that meeting to see what could be done to improve society. Now he was thinking of killing people? The second agent, the tall one, had seemed almost decent. The first one was cruel. The world spun for a moment, and he knew his time was short. He started stomping on ampules. He knew on some level that they would make more. Maybe he already had a warehouse full of them. But at least these ones right under his feet, would do no harm. His heart was pounding more, and his vision was getting blurry. He stopped because there were only 2 ampules left. The one in the needle in his hand, and one near the corner that he had not yet crushed. He knew he had to make some sort of decision. It was the unnamed director who had ordered him killed, but he had no time to find out who and where that person was. He knelt over the first agent, the one who had delighted in his cruelty, and injected the yellow liquid. It again left not so much as a visible hole from the tiny needle. But he had done it. He'd never so much as gotten into a serious fight as an adult. Now he'd knocked 2 men unconscious and killed one of them in his sleep. But part of him chastised him. Would he not at least try to do some good before dying? There were so many cruel people in the government now. He popped the spent ampule out and went to the corner. He knew it was there, the last ampule, but his vision was blurring and his chest was starting to hurt. He put his hand on the ampule and managed to get it back up in the needle. But no, he didn't really want to kill the other agent. He had, with a few words, shown that he had had a heart. Perhaps he could be made decent again. Some might scorn him for sparing him, but then some might scorn him for killing the first agent. This was his decision. And not just in the sense that it was his to make, though it was, but also it was his choice, his action. The only thing he really owned right now in the few moments before he died. He sat down cross-legged next to the second agent. He took off his shoe and injected the serum into the sole. He set the shoe down, with the needle still stuck into the sole and the used ampule still in the device, on the floor, directly next to the second agent. He wanted him to know that he had every chance of killing him and decided not to. He hoped the man would think on why that was. He hoped it helped. He lay down on the floor between the two agents and his vision went dark. But it went dark with hopeful thoughts drifting through his mind as he slipped away. And that's the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed writing it. It's sort of strange. I guess to tell you the story, I had been writing all this week a different story, and I will probably end up continuing to write that one, and it'll end up being, next week's episode, and probably further, because this other story I'm referring to, it will need to be a lot longer than one episode. And I had written enough that I could have finished it up last night and been okay with it. But then so this was Saturday, is what I'm talking about. But then Saturday morning, I woke up and I had a dream that was basically this story. Obviously, I had to change some details and stuff, and I also had to come up with an ending, because really, and of course, in the dream, I was the guy being injected and killed. And I was injected in the story, but you don't really die in your dreams, and that seems to be an actual real truth. Like, it doesn't seem to just be a thing from like movies and stuff. But very much a lot of the rest of the story happened exactly as the dream did. But then I had to come up with the ending, because I didn't really die in the dream. I think I started fighting the two agents, but I didn't. And then it started repeating. And so I had to come up with the entire ending, and also kind of like fill out a lot of details that were not really in this, in the dream. But it was a fun exercise, and it wrote very quickly because I knew the entire plot, so I just had to get it all out. And it's kind of crazy how fast you can write when you actually know every detail of the story, and you just need to actually get it on paper. So this was literally all written last night, and then I did do a little re-edit this morning before the thing, and I think I changed 10 words total. It was an interesting writing experience. Very seldom do I actually write stories based on dreams of mine, partly because I don't remember most of my dreams. Mostly as soon as I wake up, the dream sort of slips away. In this case, I woke up and I was still tired, but the dream was so fresh in my head that I actually wrote it down. I wrote down notes of the important beats that happened in the story. And by that time, I should have gone back to sleep, but by the time I had done all the writing for that, of the sort of the story beats, I ended up kind of fully waking, and I ended up having to take a long nap later, but whatever. Anyway, so very interesting writing experience, one I don't have a lot of experience in. I think I had one other story, but I can't even remember which one it was, that was sort of based on a dream I had, but even then I don't think it was beat for beat the exact same story. This story, all the important things that happened in the story were in my dream. It's just the ending that I had to come up with, and so some of the details to fill out, I'll do a little bit of world building and stuff like that. And even those were sort of in the story too, because the visual parts of the story I actually had in my head, with the sterile architecture and the weird room with the glass wall and everything like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. It was certainly an interesting experience writing it, and I will continue on probably with the other story unless something else happens. And see you next time. So thank you for listening. Words and music copyright 2025, CryptoBiography LLC. Brandon Starr, all rights reserved. Words and music are I messed that up, didn't I? Because I forgot to write down the copyright bit at the end of the thing like I usually do. If you have any comments or questions about this story or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Blue Sky. I no longer use Twitter, and I really don't touch Mastodon very much either, or what's the other one? The Strands or whatever it's called, the Meta one. And yeah, so you can definitely check us out there instead. Blue Sky is actually really interesting, and I've actually been enjoying using that one. So yeah, words and music copyright Brandon Starr, 2025, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.